Chapter 8, in which a soul leaps and a trap is sprung. Ravini shivered, his foot hanging off the porch step. It was nearly midnight. He hadn't quite made the choice yet, whether he was going to sneak out to walk through the woods alone in darkness to meet a strange girl in the old graveyard. Almost all of him didn't want to. It was a lot of risk for the hurried whisper of a girl he'd barely met. And yet, the first night they'd come, his loneliness had been so strong it had woken him up. He was tired to his soul of being lonely, and he thought for too long, someday I'll be happy. Someday I'll have a friend. Well, maybe it wasn't meant to be someday. Maybe, after all, maybe it was some night. When two souls find each other in the darkness, sometimes there is a reaching out, and sometimes there is a leap. Ravini leaped over the 3 stairs of the back porch, knowing that they had creaked and that the window to his parents' room was right overhead. He flew through the cool night air and landed on the moon-washed grass, then tiptoed across the lawn to the forest edge. He knew the old graveyard, and he knew all the way there. He didn't know how she knew about it, though. It wasn't easy to find. She must have gone exploring on her own. It was an old place, almost entirely forgotten, lost in the woods and overgrown. Ravini crept through the forest, stepping over logs and ducking under branches. The world was a middle-of-the-night sort of quiet, but it wasn't any sort of still. Crickets chirped, insects buzzed, and small living things skittered and scurried all around him. Finally, up ahead he saw it, the clearing where the graves lay waiting. He hopped over one more log and then stopped at the graveyard's edge. He'd never seen it at night. The grave markers rose up out of the long grass, shining like crooked teeth in the moonlight. Some were crosses, some were rounded tombstones, some were statues, some were wooden, some were stone. All were crumbling, leaning, decaying. It was eerie in the silver light and inky blackness. The hairs on Ravini's arms rose up, tingling. He stayed in the shadow along the graveyard's border, scanning for Virginia. A sound stopped him, his foot dangling an inch above the ground. It wasn't a footstep or a branch breaking. It was a crack, a soft pop. It didn't come from the graveyard, but from off to the side, in the thickness of the forest. Ravini stood frozen. Then he heard it again, and with it a murmur of a voice. It must be Virginia, he thought, making her way toward him. Lost, perhaps, looking for the graveyard. He walked toward her, listening close. The sounds got louder. Then he smelt it and saw it. Smoke and the yellow flicker of flames. A campfire snapping and crackling. He took a few steps closer. Why had Virginia built a fire? But then a bulky shadow that definitely did not belong to Virginia lurched into the firelight. Ravini would have recognized the brutish shape of the shadow anywhere. Donnie Carter. Ravini's blood shot hot with cold electricity. He tried to take a step back, but a hand clamped hard over his mouth and a voice hissed into his ear. Don't move a muscle. This was a short chapter. Come back for chapter 9.